Oh, hi. I'm so glad you're on time. I'm V. I'm looking forward to showing you around Planned-Opolis today. My husband works from home. He's a virtual engineer working on one of the city's desalination plants. He controls the robots who do all the important maintenance. I think he basically plays computer games for a living. You ready to go? Have you got your calorie card open on your smartphone? I registered your visit with Slick Travel Corp the other day, so they've allotted you a journey time to match mine. It makes so much sense, doesn't it? Switch off brain and go to work. With this many people around, I'm glad there's a mega computer in charge. We're so lucky. Our kids were allocated a school quite near my practice, so I can drop them off on the way. It saves on our calorie ration. Well, it won't be long until the little darlings get their career announcements. They've been working so hard, so I'm sure they'll get something good. Not that there's anything wrong with fixing carbon scrubbers for a living or anything. Are you hungry? Let's pop to the market as we're passing. Right, what's on the menu this month? No, not meat. It's not your birthday. The Global Food Council are doing a really good job of keeping food production going. I mean, you don't get the choice you used to, but we're better off than most. I think it's probably easiest to walk from here. You barely see a car in the city centre nowadays, unless you're rich. Well, the state knows they just aren't practical anymore. We're all trying to meet our global carbon deal. Electric bikes are so much better for getting around our neighbourhood. And why waste valuable space on car parks when you can use them to grow food? I don't care what you say, Alex. They don't deserve to live in that ghetto. They are completely disconnected. No high-speed transport system, no new internet. They miss out on jobs and many essential services too. Oh, hi again. What a day. I had to make an emergency visit to the Cry Freedom Ghetto. I mean, I miss my sister like mad, but I'm glad they went when they were moved to New Amsterdam. They're safe from climate change on the floating city. Oh, that must be her now. It's much easier to meet up with friends virtually now. So many cities have banned cars in central areas. Ooh, looks like she's got some juicy gossip.
Hi everyone, I just wanted to give you my commentary on this video that I found on vigilancecitizen.com. It's called Planned-Opolis. By Forum for the Future, envisions scenarios for cities in 2040. Action for a sustainable world, how will people travel in the future? This is actually part of a series of, I think, 4 videos uploaded on YouTube by Spidetech, Spy.3K. First of all, as they mention here on Vigilant Citizen, this was funded by corporations such as Bank of America, the City of London Corporation, PepsiCo UK, Time Warner, Royal Dutch Shell, and Vodafone. And basically, this little character, V, who's a doctor, takes you through a day in her life in 4 different scenarios in 4 different videos. They all have certain things in common. Number 1, food and water is regulated and rationed by a global food council that seizes total control over farming. Meat is a rare treat to be enjoyed only on special occasions. That's not so far in the future. I mean, that's how it is right now. Not 100%, but certainly heading in that direction. And as far as the globalists/corporatists are concerned, making excellent progress. And pretty soon, small farmers will be, pushed out completely, and it's all about agribusiness and especially biotech. 2, the state decides what your job will be. You get designated career announcements. Now, where have I heard this before? Oh yeah, Aldous Huxley, Brave New World. So are you an alpha or a beta or a delta, or maybe you're an omega and you're going to be picking up garbage for the rest of your life? So the government...
Welcome to the New World Order!
All right, and welcome back to Truth or Talk. Please visit our website at truthertees.com, or you can shop with us at shop@truthertees.com. On today's show, we'll be talking to Dr. Rima Laibow. Dr. Rima Laibow is a medical director of the Natural Solutions Foundation. She has practiced drug-free medicine and psychiatry since graduating from medical school in 1970. The Natural Solutions Foundation is based on the premise that you, not the state, actually own your body, and you must be free to access the food, healthcare, and information that you wish. She runs her weekly radio show, Dr. Rima Reports, on Sundays from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Time, which can be heard at www.healthfreedomportal.org. She is one of the co-founders of Valley of the Moon in Panama. Following Fukushima Daiichi in March of 2011, the Natural Solutions Foundation and Dr. Rima shifted priorities to bring the urgently needed low-radiation food supply of totally organic food to the Northern Hemisphere. Closing their eco-demonstration project in Panama, the foundation shifted its international activities to Chile to create and deliver this clean food supply. The foundation and Dr. Rima remain active in health freedom in the U.S. and elsewhere. To learn more and to join Dr. Rima in her fight against globalization, you can go to one of the websites at www.globalhealthfreedom.org. Please welcome Dr. Rima to the show. Hello, Dr. Rima. How are you?
I'm very well, and thank you so much for having me with you. It's a great honor.
Yeah, thanks for being on. Yeah, so we followed your work for a while, and we're very, very honored to have you on.
Yes.
So I want to know first, why and how did you make the unorthodox decision to practice drug-free medicine? And was there a lot of opposition?
Well, let me put it another way. Why and how would anybody make the ridiculous decision to practice drug medicine? When I was in medical school, I was being taught physiology and biochemistry and anatomy, and I said, wait, this pharmacology that you're teaching me doesn't make any sense, because what you're doing is teaching me how to use substances, drugs, that poison the enzyme system of the body. That's how every drug works. They all work the same way. They poison the enzyme system of the body. If you don't like the results, you call it a side effect. If you do like the results, you call it a clinical benefit. But really, there are only side effects when you use foreign and dangerous chemicals. And I said, surely there is a better way. If you poison the very stuff of life, which is what enzymes are, and they're at any moment in each of our 10 trillion cells, there are about 35,000 enzymatic reactions going on at the same moment. And if you poison them, explain to me, I said to my professors, how you are helping anybody. All you're doing is suppressing symptoms, and that doesn't cure disease. And they said to me, shut up and sit down. And I said, but I want to know. And so, you see, what I was doing was thinking, and I was asking questions that medicine really chooses not to have its practitioners ask. I was asking why questions. They're perfectly happy to have you ask how questions, but never why questions. And so I determined when I left my graduate training and went into my residency in psychiatry, child, adolescent, and adult psychiatry, I determined that I would never use a drug when there was a non-drug option that would work better, more quickly, and more safely. And for that reason, in 42 years of medical practice, both in psychiatry and in medicine per se, I have never written a prescription for a drug. I have written prescriptions for bioidentical hormones, and I have treated some of the most hopeless, incurable people in the world, and they've gotten well without drugs. So yes, Virginia, there is psychiatry without pharmaceuticals, and yes, there is good medicine without drugs. Now, the drug companies don't like doctors who practice this way, and they don't like the information out and about that their toxic chemicals, which are, according to the American Medical Association, the leading cause of death in the United States, are not really necessary. They're expensive, and they're cataclysmically dangerous. So I ask again, why would anybody make the choice to practice drug-based medicine?
Wow.
That's a good question.
Yeah, that's, I like the never the why question. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Let me add another corollary to that. People call what I do and other good doctors and good health practitioners do alternative medicine. Nothing could be further from the truth. What I practice is not alternative. Drug care, including chemotherapy, vaccines, and other cataclysmic stupidities, are alternatives, and they're the poor alternatives. What I practice is good medicine.
Wow. So I'm assuming there was a lot of opposition, like you said, right, when you decided to practice drug-free medicine. That's very interesting. So I would like to know, what is Codex Alimentarius, and how did you become aware of this organization, and why should people know about it?
Well, Codex Alimentarius has a very interesting history, and it affects you and your family, your future, and your survival every single day, whether or not you're aware of it. If you go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Natural Solutions, like the name of our foundation, Natural Solutions Foundation, and you look up Nutricide, Nutricide, Nutra, Nutricide, CIDE, or you just Google it, you will come to a 40-minute lecture, which I gave, which some kind soul videotape. Now, that lecture lays out the history of Codex Alimentarius. What happened was that after the Second World War, the executives of IG Farben, which was the civilian side of the German war machine, went to jail for a very short time following the Nuremberg War Tribunal. They were charged with crimes against humanity, and they got out of jail in just a few years after slaughtering God knows how many millions and bringing about indescribable horror. They were all pharmaceutical executives, by the way, and those pharmaceutical companies were all controlled by John D. Rockefeller, Jr., the man who introduced eugenics or genocide to Germany during the reign of the Kaiser Wilhelm period, long before Hitler. And John D. Rockefeller was one of the people who chose Hitler. That had to do with how drugs are sold and how medicine, allopathic medicine, was constructed to be a pharmaceutical sales system. But that's another story. So they got out of jail, and they said to each other, they went back to their jobs as the head of Bayer Pharmaceutical and Horst and BASF and so on, and they said to each other, well, that didn't work. What can we do now? Because they still had a genocidal agenda, and it was not fulfilled yet. So they said, got it, we could use food. Ooh, what a great idea. Why didn't we think of that? We could have saved all that money in terms of railroad cars and crematoria. We could have just poisoned people, eliminated their reproductive capacity, and saved all that money and gotten rid of them. So why don't we do that now? Oh, yes, let's do that. So they wrote a letter. 11 pharmaceutical executives of Germany who had been convicted war criminals wrote a letter to the United Nations, which is a globalist organization, start to finish. They're not your friend. UNICEF is not your friend. You don't want to have your kids collecting pennies for UNICEF. This is a globalist depopulation organization. So they wrote a letter to the United Nations, and they said, why don't you take over the world food supply? And the United Nations said, ooh, good idea. And they created the Codex Alimentarius, or the Food Code Commission, which is run jointly by the World Health Organization, which is funded by, it's a private organization, by the way. It's funded by the pharmaceutical industry and by the Food and Agriculture Organization, funded by Big Agri. And they created this commission to set guidelines and standards, voluntary, every one of them, to control the world's trade of food across international borders. Well, Until 1994, nobody paid any attention at all to Codex Alimentarius, although it was set up in 1962 and started working in 1963. However, with 1994's creation of the World Trade Organization, which countries, for reasons that elude me, agreed to allow to impose horribly punitive trade sanctions upon them, the Codex Alimentarius Commission gained a huge stick, massive trade sanctions by the World Trade Organization. So, as I was considering how to safeguard our health and our choice and our freedom, and I had been aware of Codex Alimentarius for a long time at that point, I decided that we would solve the Codex problem. And one of the first things we did was connect with a health freedom lawyer named Ralph Fusatola, who is now one of our trustees. And I said, Mr. Fusatola, I would like you to solve the Codex Alimentarius problem at the legal level, which is where the solution needs to lie. And I have nothing to pay you with. This has to be a pro bono activity. And he said, certainly. May I call in another attorney named Jim Turner? And we said, of course, we know Jim and we trust him. So the two of them spent thousands of hours working pro bono to solve the Codex problem and give every country in the world a tool with which the country can protect its people from the inferior, poisoned, degraded food supply that Codex permits and enthusiastically endorses, and at the same time avoid the trade sanctions. And those countries which have taken our advice have indeed prevailed at the World Trade Organization level, which is very important. Codex is run by one dominant dog in practical terms, and that's the United States. I've written a great deal about Codex. Codex degrades your food supply. Codex gives you food that does not support life and says it's perfectly okay. I'll give you one example out of many, and maybe I'll give you two examples. One is fructose. We now know that high fructose corn syrup is really, 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 really bad for people. Now, even the Fraud and Death Administration, the FDA of the United States government, was not willing to have fructose in the beverage supply in the United States until 1985, when Codex passed or ratified a standard which permitted fructose in the beverage supply. At that point, the U.S. reluctantly said, okay, we don't have any choice but to allow fructose in the beverage supply. And the rates of childhood diabetes and obesity and childhood cardiac disease skyrocketed because of that simple decision. There are so many others. So Codex does what the United States wants, and you will remember that Benito Mussolini, the dictator of Italy before and during the Second World War, defined fascism as the merger of the corporation and the state. Codex is an example of the implementation of that fascist merger, because the wishes and policies of the United States government are now the wishes and policies of the multinational corporations. We have achieved a fascist form of government in the United States because the corporations and the United States government have merged their policy and positions. Think Monsanto.
Wow. So you kind of addressed a little bit how Codex is connected to UN Agenda 21. Could you elaborate on more about what Agenda 21 is?
I'd be happy to. Agenda 21 is the end of your life as you know it. Very simple. Agenda 21, which you can research on the internet. Type in Agenda 21 text, and you will find a 40-chapter, fairly brief document that outlines the end of private property, the fact that you and your family, unless you are high in the regime, will live in a 16 by 16 cubicle, that's feet. You will be permitted to travel freely only as far as you can walk or bicycle. Otherwise, you will need a permit. 90% of the Earth's surface will be allegedly off limits to the entire human race. I doubt very much that the elite, the neo-aristocrats, will hold themselves to any such prohibition. And your children will be undereducated because, according to Agenda 21, and you can read it for yourself, people with higher education consume more resources. Therefore, all people, except, of course, the children of the elite, we have to presume, will be kept to an educational level that does not allow them to compute using mathematical tools, does not allow them to think using rational tools, and keeps them as fit servants. But we don't need very many of them. The sustainability documents of the United Nations, the World Health Organization, the United States, the Club of Rome, the Council on Foreign Relations all make it very clear, and if you doubt me, read their documents for yourself, all make it very clear that the goal is to reduce the world's population by 90, that is 90%. And Agenda 21 is a large part of how that remaining 10% will be managed in urban concentration zones.
Wow. This is Halloween, month, but this is this is real scary stuff,
It really is. And you talked about the food supply, and one of the things I remember seeing in one of your videos was about how the intention is to start taking away vitamin supplements. Those are going to be labeled as toxins. And we've kind of seen that it's already happening in Europe. And so when I start to see those things happen, I think, oh, is this part of Agenda 21? Which
absolutely it is.
Right. And I think there has been attempts to do that in the United States. There has, with some success, and with
a huge amount of success until we, the people, beat them back. Let me be very clear about the fact that there is a dirty little secret among the globalist agenda people, and that is that they're very weak. We, the people, are what they fear because we have the power. Once we can communicate with each other and mobilize our information and our demands, they step back every single time. They don't want you to know that. They want you to believe that they're invincible and incredibly powerful. But, for example, the FDA has made one of the 3 bioavailable forms of vitamin B6 an illegal drug. They have labeled vitamin C as an unregistered drug. They have registered your own stem cells as a pharmaceutical drug that you don't have the right to use. Are these people crazy? Yes, they're crazy, but they are operating at the behest of the pharmaceutical and agricultural businesses, which are part of the globalist genocidal agenda. But to go forward with that, in 2008, Secretary of Health and Human Services, Kathleen Sebelius, and that organization is the parent organization of the Fraud and Death Administration, the FDA, and the Center for the Development of Diseases, the CDC, the Center for Disease Concoction. These organizations are part of a larger organization called Health and Human Services. Kathleen Sebelius went before Congress on September 15th of 2009 and said that every man, woman, and child in the United States would be vaccinated with or without their consent against swine flu, which, by the way, is a genetically engineered virus which was designed to kill a whole lot of people, which would be disseminated as viruses usually are, by vaccinating people, because vaccines don't work, and they do in fact cause the diseases that they supposedly prevent. So she went before Congress and announced this plan for involuntary vaccination of everyone in the United States. We got wind of this, and we, the Natural Solutions Foundation, alerted our people, and in 11 days, 3.5 million emails reached the White House and every member of Congress and the desk of Kathleen Sebelius. We crashed the system, and every governor and every state legislator in the country. And the plan was scrapped. Kathleen Sebelius said, okay, we won't do that. And we've done that several times, but it takes massive effort on the part of people who are riding the freedom mouse. How do you ride the freedom mouse? You put your hand on your mouse and you click submit on the action item that we ask you to take. One action item is meaningless. 1 million action items changes policy. Oh, they come back the next time. They figure out another way around it. But when we act, when we speak powerfully to power, when we speak truth to power in our might, they step back every single time.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the vaccine issue. Virstyne and I are both big on this issue because we both have loved ones who've been vaccine damaged, my son and her cousin. And so we're obviously against a vaccination and had to learn the hard way how deadly these things are. But we've seen a lot of, as you're mentioning, a lot of aggression in the trying to push these things on people through these mandates, through the healthcare workers and the kids going to school, the military. Here in California, we've recently had 2 bills get passed. This one just got passed a few days ago, AB 2109, and which is sort of removing children's right to have a personal belief exemption. They have to go see a doctor to give them a personal belief. Have you heard about this, Dr. Rima?
Absolutely, and the Natural Solutions Foundation urged people to take very strong and decisive action against it. Unfortunately, a lot of people think, oh, I don't have children, it doesn't touch me, or I don't live in California, it doesn't touch me. They don't realize that these disastrous bills and the vaccine schedules will be ramped up for adults, and once one state gets away with it, then the rest of the states do the same.
Yep, exactly. Definitely.
Right, and then last year we had the other bill, which I think you're probably aware of as well, the Gardasil one, the AB 499, which was also passed. So California seems to be really clamping down hard and getting a lot of pharmaceutical input. I mean, we fought it vigorously here in this state, but they both went through. So, I mean, and not enough, I guess, but so why do you think they're getting so aggressive? Do you think it's just pharma's buying them out, or?
The Natural Solutions Foundation has sued the FDA 3 times in federal court, and we have won each time. Unfortunately, the judge has issued opinions or verdicts which are so narrow that we have to go back, and it's very expensive. But here's the situation. We have said there is no such thing as a legal vaccine in the United States. Under U.S. law, every vaccine has to be shown to be both safe and effective. Well, since vaccines don't work and they are inherently unsafe, there is no such thing as either a safe or an effective vaccine. Therefore, we want you to deregulate every vaccine on the market. Well, we're correct. The problem is that we need to go back to court again and again and again and reshape the suit until finally, in the aggregate, we have won all of the points that we need to win. In the course of preparing for these lawsuits, we have discovered documentation from inside the pharmaceutical companies that make the following clear. Yeah, we make a lot of money from vaccines, and we have had any kind of legal liability lifted from us by the compliance of the U.S. Congress, thank you so much. So we can do anything we want and never be held criminally or civilly liable, but the real money is not in the vaccines, good as that is. The real money is in the fact that vaccines create an aftermarket. And the aftermarket has names you're familiar with: cancer, cardiovascular disease, stroke, obesity, diabetes, neurological disease, infertility. That's the money. That's the money. And vaccines help to create the immunological disaster that allows these things to develop. You're dealing with criminals.
Evil. To me, it's just plain evil. Criminal, yeah. Criminal is an understatement, but I guess for me, I think, they're just. Anyway, so I want to know, going into the GMO debate, I want to know exactly what are GMOs and why are they dangerous, and where and what types of foods they can be found in, and how do we avoid them?
Well, for an answer to the question, how are they dangerous, I'd like everyone to go to a page, www.g as in genome, D as in disruption, S as in syndrome, so gds-therapy.com, gds-therapy.com. I have coined the term GDS, Genome Disruption Syndrome, to answer your question and answer the question of how the other things that are being used against us impact us, make us sick, make us infertile, and kill us. Everything that happens to us happens because our genes are expressing proteins or not expressing proteins in particular ways. If our genes are altered, if our genes are corrupted and contaminated, then the proteins are either expressed or suppressed in a way that is bad for us. Well, genetically modified food takes genes that do not belong in food, that we cannot digest, and inserts them to create effects that they like. Let me remind your listeners that no genetically modified food has ever been tested for safety and had that safety test examined by the FDA, because the FDA is forbidden from examining such safety testing. To get approval to put an experimental substance like any GMO into the food supply, all a company has to do is hold the patent on the modification and submit a preliminary safety test, which they do, to the FDA. They can be as deceptive as they like in that preliminary safety test. It doesn't matter. The FDA is forbidden from examining the raw data, asking how the study was conducted, or conducting its own research. So they approve the application to put this food, P-H-U-D-E, looks like food, might even smell like food, but it's not food, to put this P-H-U-D-E onto the market. Now, those genes, first of all, change the bacteria in your GI tract, and 80% of your immune system rests in your GI tract. So if the bacteria pick up foreign genes, they're no longer the same species that they were. Now, your gut, your GI tract, is damaged by the presence of this foreign DNA. So you start leaking proteins and leaking bits of undigested food into your bloodstream. Your immune system says, oh my God, there are things that don't belong here, and starts to attack. But we are built of the same building blocks, and so now you've got an autoimmune attack on you. That's why things like food sensitivities and infertility and autoimmune diseases like lupus have been skyrocketing. Your immune system is now fatigued, and you've got foreign DNA which makes its way into your cells and into the DNA that you were born with. Your DNA controls your present, determines your future, and reflects your past. If it's messed with, especially in unpredictable ways that no one knows the long-term results of, the consequences are going to be pretty horrendous. And we already know from the independent science that's being conducted and has been conducted, like Dr. Serolini's research that was released 2 weeks ago in France, the only long-term feeding study on GMOs that was ever done, a 2-year feeding study. We know that the results of eating GMOs are cancer, cardiovascular disease, shortened lifespan, infertility, fetal malformation, all of the things that are happening at skyrocketing rates. Now, how do you avoid GMOs? Well, in California, when Proposition 37 passes, if the U.S. government does not inactivate the will of the people, which they probably will, you would require labeling, as 90 countries in the world do. The FDA does not want you to have labeled GMOs. In fact, it is a crime to label food as either containing or not containing GMOs. The FDA has made it very clear they do not want you to have the ability to reject GMO PHUDE because they know you would, and they have strong interest in the agrochemical and biotech companies, which are also the pharmaceutical companies, by the way. They have strong interest in not having you reject that PHUDE. So, this battle that's being fought in California for Proposition 37 to pass is one that will affect the entire country, indeed, the entire world. And there is now a consortium of 6 states which will pass the labeling bill immediately after California does, if they can. Monsanto has a CEO who made the following statement about 2 weeks ago. Putting a label on a GMO food is equivalent to putting a skull and crossbones on it.
Wow.
That says it all. He's admitting it, basically.
Let me say one other thing. At the European headquarters in London of Monsanto, the employees threatened to quit en masse if Monsanto did not stop serving GMO food in their cafeteria. They demanded a conversion to a 100% organic cafeteria, and they got it because they were all going to quit. What does that say to you?
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, they're insiders, so they know better than anybody else. So they're in there and are that frightened of their own food. I mean, that says a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how they can go and create that for everybody else when they're eat it themselves.
Well, one has to wonder about their ethics, doesn't one?
Yes.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. Because I'm just curious, has your research led you down the rabbit hole of chemtrails?
Oh, absolutely. It's not a rabbit hole. It's absolutely clear science. First of all, years ago, the United States government was denying any kind of weather modification. Now, of course, weather modification is the cover for chemtrailing. There's no question when you start doing soil analysis of what's coming down and you start looking at what's happening to people in chemtrailed areas, chemtrails are not a rabbit hole. They're a secret. And the secret is that people are being weakened in the immune system area in order to get rid of them. Chemtrails are nothing short of a genocidal tool. In fact, a new website, which is almost ready, is called www.savemylifedrrima.com. And in it we talk about the 5 big lies, the lies that are used to promulgate genocide. One of them is chemtrails. One is nuclear power and radiation, a genocidal technology. One of them is drugs and vaccines. One of them is contaminated food, and the fifth is GMOs. It's not a rabbit hole, it's a reality.
Got you. Got you. You know, is there anything, well, actually I noticed I was a little bit depressed. We interviewed somebody, actually, a guy named Dane Wigington, on talking about chemtrails last week. And this week, they sprayed the stuff out of us. You just see them all in the sky, and then I noticed that my allergies started to act up, and I noticed other people started to sneeze, and it was just, and I start thinking about the chemtrails too, and the direct effect that it has on our immune system. So I was just wondering, is there anything that we can eat or take to kind of lessen the effects
yes,
of
You absolutely want to go to a page that we have called www.tinyurl. Just a minute, there's a telephone walking out of the room. tinyurl.com/rad, R-A-D, protect. tinyurl.com/rad protect. And the same things that you can do to protect yourself from the ever-increasing radiation that you are being bombarded with despite a media blackout following Fukushima Daiichi, the same thing that is happening that you can do to protect yourself will help protect your immune system from the ravages of chemtrails. It's terribly important. You can also go to another page that we have called www.drrimaknows, where we have concentrated on several remarkable products that we want you to know about. drrimaknows.com. This is important stuff, and we urge you to sign up for the free newsletter at globalhealthfreedom.org, or put your email in at any of our websites, and we will send you our information with lots and lots and lots of scientifically based information about how to protect yourself and your family, how to get your money out of the United States before the fiscal cliff which you are facing at the beginning of January 1st, 2013, comes and smashes your personal financial security. You are about to lose the ability to invest offshore. You would like to maintain your fiscal integrity if you have assets and resources, and that will no longer be possible. So if you are interested in knowing more about that, if you have an IRA that you would like to not have seized, or if you have an asset base and you know that the dollar is being destroyed and you'd like to do something about it, then you can write to me at Dr. Rima, that's D-R-R-I-M-A, Dr. Rima at fundfornaturalsolutions.org. That's Dr. Rima at fund, F-U-N-D, fornaturalsolutions.org. We have a series of tipping point projects designed to push the globalists back and to make a profit for people who expatriate, who get their funds out of the United States legally. This is an SEC-registered fund. Why are we thinking about investing? Because if our supporters' financial asset base is destroyed, they're even more likely to be slaves.
Dr. Rima, are you ever sort of given some kind of threats, or do you ever have kinds of phone calls or emails or things that are kind of frightening, and in nature?
No. I'm very vocal, and people know that if that happened, I would share that information. Our website is attacked on a regular basis. Our electronic communications are interfered with. On the radio show, typically when we get to a really, really important part of the show, the sound goes dead. Our supporters on the Dr. Rima Truth Reports every Sunday between 10 a.m. and noon Eastern Time at healthfreedomportal.org. Our supporters know that when the sound goes dead, if they hang in, we'll get the sound back up, but it means that the people who are monitoring us don't want them to know what we're saying. So they take that as a sign that we've just hit something really important.
Well, one of the things that we've been talking about when you were bringing out, or when we were talking about Codex and Agenda 21, struck to mind the Gates Foundation. How is the Gates Foundation involved? Because when we look into these guys, we tend to find that they're involved in a lot of these things, GMOs, vaccines.
Bill Gates' father was a leading eugenicist. He was a leading population reduction guy, and he trained up little Billy very well. Bill Gates' foundation is a purveyor of poison to the vulnerable around the world. His vaccinations contain twice the mercury that U.S. children are exposed to in the vaccinations they receive. Twice the mercury. Wow. The vaccines don't work, but it doesn't matter. They don't prevent disease, but they do damage the immune system and the nervous system and the endocrine system, and that's the point. Now let me tell you about a document that I have in my possession. This is an internal document, and I've published it. This is an internal document from the World Health Organization that says that the purpose of the much ballyhooed smallpox eradication program in South Africa has nothing to do with eradicating smallpox. It has everything to do with creating infertility among African women in the black African part of Africa, sub-Saharan Africa. And it says, and I quote, "The purpose of this program is to eliminate 150 million excess sub-Saharan Africans." And Bill Gates is in there pitching. Well, his charming wife, Melinda, made a statement. Oh, and you will remember that Bill Gates, at a TED talk,
yes,
TED, said that vaccines properly used would eliminate 12 to 15% of the population. Properly used. So his wife, Melinda Gates, now has her own foundation. And she says publicly, you can see it on the internet, although she is a practicing Catholic, she has overcome her own reluctance and now has created a foundation which will give third world women the opportunity to become permanently infertile.
That's just terrible. You're talking about October is supposed to be Agent Orange Awareness Month. So
No. October is supposed to be Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Well, someone put, but there must be.
Yeah, I think it's Awareness Month for a lot of different things. I've heard that it's Vaccine Injury Awareness Month, Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and someone else had a post on Facebook the other day that said it's Damage from Agent Orange Awareness Month too. So I don't know. Everybody's trying to claim October
for a lot of things, yeah.
For a lot of different things. So I think we just wanted to ask about Agent Orange because we've been bringing up, and we know that Agent Orange was used during the Vietnam War and destroyed a lot of lives, continues to do so to this day. So
you do focus on, I hope, the fact that Monsanto and DuPont, DuPont particularly was involved with napalm, but Monsanto is the purveyor of Agent Orange, which is now being sprayed through the compliance of the ever pharma-friendly Fraud and Death Administration, which is now being sprayed on our crops and will continue to be sprayed on our crops because Monsanto has developed an Agent Orange resistant crop, genetically modified crop, which means we spray lots of it on there. The weeds die. Well, some of them don't. They become super weeds. And the bugs die. Well, some of them don't. They become super bugs. But anyway, we now have food, PHUDE, contaminated not only with foreign genes, but with Agent Orange. 2,4-D, the daughter product of Agent Orange. Wonderful.
Oh, God.
Right. Yeah, and then the Chemtrail interview that we did the other day, he said also the Monsanto is creating the seeds to be resistant to the chaff that they spray, the aluminum and the barium and all of these things that they're spraying as well. And when you mentioned the genetic, how GMOs can alter your DNA, vaccines do that as well, right? Because they have the recombinant DNAs and the foreign from animal cells and such.
Correct.
Right. So it's pretty hard to believe that this isn't part of a larger agenda when they're all kind of got their hands in all these different things and they're all sort of interconnected and.
Why would you choose not to believe that it's part of a larger agenda when they tell us in their own published writings that it is part of a larger agenda?
What? I don't know. That's
I think. Well, I'm sorry. Go on.
Go ahead. We asked that all the time.
Because we come up. I sent. We sent out the Bill Gates video a long time ago, and I actually lost 2 friends because of it, because they were really offended that I would even say something, about Bill Gates being a part of a globalist agenda. I don't know. I think people are afraid. People are in denial. There are people that just don't want to admit that they've been bamboozled. Their ego gets in the way.
They have to make their own way toward the truth. All we can do is tell the truth clearly, seriously, and urgently, and then people will do what they will with that truth.
Yeah, that's. You said I watched the show where you were on a conspiracy theory with Jesse Ventura, and I think you said this earlier in the show today too, about how the secret is that they're weak, but we are powerful as people, and so it's really just kind of coming into it and realizing what's actually happening and then doing something and being proactive about it. So tell us again, how is your organization, how are we able to go onto Natural Health Solutions to sign the petitions and help fight? What do you guys do?
Oh, absolutely. First of all, you can go to www.gds, G for genome, D for disruption, S for syndrome, GDS-therapy.com. Put your email in, and we will put you on our mailing list. You'll also get some vital information that you really need. Take it to your doctor, by the way. So GDS-therapy.com is one way to do it. Another way is to go to our main website, globalhealthfreedom.org. Another way is to listen to and participate in the chat for our radio show, which is the Dr. Rima Truth Reports. We tell you the truth. And that's www.healthfreedomportal.org. And if you're interested in dealing with protecting your asset base, then you really want to go to www.fundfornaturalsolutions.org. And fundfornaturalsolutions.org will give you information about how to protect your assets and bring your assets and your values together. Or you can write to me at Dr. Rima, D-R-R-I-M-A, at fundfornaturalsolutions.org. If you want the products that will help protect your health, you can go, that I recommend personally and I use, you can go to either www.drrimaknows.com, or you can go to tinyurl.com/rad, R-A-D, protect. Rad protect. There are a lot of ways to reach us. Take your pick.
Well, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, yeah.
Yeah, I think we've run out of time here with Dr. Rima, but it's certainly been a very informative interview, and you've given us a lot of good information and a lot of good information for our listeners out there.
And a lot of inspiration, too. You're in good spirits. You're very positive, yeah. Because a lot of stuff is very overwhelming, so, sometimes I think you hear this stuff and you get depressed, but
you have solutions. You're very solution-oriented.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is good. So once again, we want to Dr. Rima. Oh, I'm sorry.
I just want to thank you for having me on your show and for sharing our information with your listeners. I hope you'll send me the link so I can put it in my archives.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
We'll absolutely do that, and we'll let you know when it airs. And we thank you so much for your time and for being on the show. And once again, I think that you gave a lot of websites, but the main ones are healthfreedomusa.org and globalhealthfreedom.org, correct?
Yes.
Okay, great. So thanks again, and if you need to contact Dr. Rima, you can find her at one of those websites she mentioned, or healthfreedomusa.org, globalhealthfreedom.org. And thank you for your time. And Christina and I are going to take a short break, and when we get back, we will be closing the show. Thanks for listening to Truth or Talk.
Thank you. Thanks, Dr. Rima.
Hello, thanks for having me on your radio. Even though we're not from a famous rock and roll band, if we were, even though we sound a little like we are, we'd definitely wear a Conspiracy Realist t-shirt, because they're gear, aren't they? Oh yeah, they're really gear. I want to write a song about them. Conspiracy Realist t-shirt at truthandtease.com. I gotta think of the middle A. Shop.truthandtease.com. What does that mean? It's the internet. What's that? I don't know. It's a net. It's between things. Shop.truthandtease.com. What's that? So you get Conspiracy Realist t-shirt. Oh, gear.
6 billion tons. For each American, it's about 20 tons. For people in poor countries, it's less than 1 ton. It's an average about 5 tons for everyone on the planet. And somehow we have to make changes that will bring that down to zero. It's been constantly going up. It's only various economic changes that have even flattened it at all. So we have to go from rapidly rising to falling and falling all the way to zero. This equation has 4 factors, a little bit of multiplication. So you've got a thing on the left, CO2, that you want to get to zero. And that's going to be based on the number of people, the services each person's using on average, the energy on average for each service, and the CO2 being put out per unit of energy. So let's look at each one of these and see how we can get this down to zero. Probably one of these numbers is going to have to get pretty near to zero. That's back from high school algebra. But let's take a look. First, we've got population. The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, health care, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%. But
welcome to the new world!
All right, well, hello and welcome back. Please visit our website at truthandtease.com. You can also shop with us at shop.truthandtease.com, where you can buy our lovely Conspiracy Realist t-shirt. Also, if you buy 3 t-shirts, you get Official Stories by Liam Shep for free. An amazing book. We're always talking about it. It's really well written and really witty, really informative. So, coming back, we were just listening to Bill Gates at the TED conference, talking about his plan, basically.
His plan, yeah, exactly.
Planet.
Yeah, we talked about this. We asked Dr. Rima Laibow about it when we were interviewing her, or we asked her about just the Gates Foundation and Bill Gates, and basically she's confirmed what so many other people we've interviewed have confirmed, which is that he is part of this whole eugenics population. I think we've asked, we talked a little bit about that with Jane Wigington, our chemtrail, because Gates Foundation is involved in geoengineering projects. They're also involved in genetically modified seeds and giving those to the third world, giving those to Africa. And the thing about GMO seeds is that not only, as Dr. Rima said, they are incredibly toxic and can be very dangerous to the body, but they don't reproduce. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense if you're trying to give seeds to a third world country so that they can have their own self-sustainability and be self-sufficient. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to give them seeds that don't reproduce on their own, because you have to go back to...
Yeah, well, it's making them dependent, basically.
Exactly. It creates dependency. So that's where we're trying to break down that paradigm of this Gates, foundation as their philanthropists. They're not. They're
the opposite. They're misanthropes, basically.
Yeah, they're Bill Gates, as Dr. Rima pointed out, his father was a part of the eugenics program. His father was one of was a former CEO or president of Planned Parenthood. And, I don't want to get into that whole thing about the pro-choice, pro-life debate, but I will say that Planned Parenthood is not, again, not a very philanthropic organization. They take money for things, and there was this whole controversy last year that they had stopped, or Susan G. Komen Foundation had stopped giving money to Planned Parenthood, and so everybody for giving mammograms. Well, let me tell you, Planned Parenthood has never given a mammogram, ever. So Susan G. Komen was giving them donation money, supposedly because Susan G. Komen's a breast cancer foundation. It's October, National Breast Cancer Awareness Month, so here's some awareness for you. The Susan G. Komen Foundation was giving Planned Parenthood money to give referrals. So basically, it's a phone call. So you call up to Planned Parenthood and you say, "Do you guys give mammograms?" They said, "No." And they go, "Okay, well, you can go here, but you can go to this place." And they would give them wherever they would send them to go. So they never, ever, ever gave a mammogram.
They took the money.
But the thing is that Susan G. Komen pulled out because Planned Parenthood has been under investigation for many different things. They've been under investigation for taking money for racist donations, for people calling up saying, "I want to abort a black baby," and things like this. And Planned Parenthood has been sneaky. They're not they're a profit organization. They call themselves a nonprofit organization, but they take more money from the government than any other nonprofit organization. So they're basically secretly a government agency. And even though they pose themselves as a nonprofit, they take a lot of money from the government. So people are paying for these things. And like I said, I don't want to get into that debate. I don't think that, I personally, I don't want to tell anybody else what to do with their lives or with their body or any of that. So I'm not into that, trying to tell people that, they absolutely need to have a baby or whatever. I'm not into that. I'm just trying to say Planned Parenthood is not a good organization. It was founded on the basis of eugenics.
Yeah.
Margaret Sanger wanted to rid the population of her words, Negro problem. And that was, and this is Bill Gates' father. Bill Gates Sr. was one of the early on presidents or CEOs, I can't remember which, of Planned Parenthood. And so, and Planned Parenthood, their plan was originally to be in the low-income, mostly a black or Latino neighborhood, because as Margaret Sanger said, she wanted to rid them of the Negro population, or problem, as she put it. And so that was her intention. She thought it was a problem, and there was just too much overpopulation in those spaces. So that's what the organization was founded on. They still practice that, even though they won't admit it. And I'm not saying that you can't go to your local Planned Parenthood and that they won't actually be nice people, or you wouldn't have. But the people that work there, they probably don't even know that.
Yeah, they don't know what they're. Yeah.
They have no idea.
It's compartmentalized. They don't understand, or they don't know.
They have no idea the history of the foundation and what it's based on, and how it's actually making profit off of these things. It's actually making profit. They make more profit if a girl has an abortion than if she has, than they do from giving her birth control. So, the incentive is, there's been some whistleblowers who've actually come out and said the incentive is to let them get pregnant so that they can have an abortion, rather than and then talk them into having an abortion, rather than to have them just come in and practice safe sex or practice, so I don't know. So I don't want to get into all that because that's a whole other rabbit hole. So
it's a whole other truth to talk. It's a whole other Oprah.
Other truth to talk, but the whole reason I'm bringing this up because this is about the Gates Foundation. So many people have told us this about the Gates Foundation and how their connection to. Yeah. We also heard who was it else that I think Kevin Annett also thought.
Yeah.
So that these guys they have their hand in a lot of different arenas.
Definitely, I was going to bring that up. That's what's fascinating to me. They're people, like you said, they have their hand in very different arenas, very different areas of interest, and yet they're saying their work is like crossing each other, right? They're like saying the same thing, especially about the Gates Foundation. So whether you're Kevin Annett and you're researching genocide and child kidnappings and murder and stuff, or you're like Dane Wigington and you're researching chemtrails, or you're Dr. Rima Laibow and you're researching Agenda 21, they all lead to basically like Bill Gates, the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds. So they have their hands in the same things,
Yeah.
So you can't help but wonder why.
Right.
And my thing is I'm always saying that, we look up to these people as a society. They're like, oh, they're rich and they're brilliant people and they're so good and they're doing all these things to help humanity. But then when you research and you find out what is actually happening, these people aren't that stupid. You'd have to be really dumb to have your hand into this stuff and just not know what you're doing. So I think they know exactly what they're doing,
Yeah, who knows if they know exactly or if they're mind control. I mean, because we also talked about this with Fritz Springmeier, too, I think. I think we even brought up the Gates Foundation with him, but he was saying, some of these people have multiple personalities. So they might know on one hand, but then on one of their personalities, but then another personality is completely unaware. I mean, who knows? Like, once you start getting into all that, like what they're doing with the MK Ultra and the mind control stuff, that's
so
where
deep.
It's so deep, but it's so bizarre that it's just like truth is stranger than fiction.
Yeah.
It just gets so weird. And I didn't bring up Bill Clinton, but I know Bill Clinton's he's got a foundation, and they raise all this money. He has a lot of celebrity support. All Illuminati, I'm sure, but I don't know. But all these people, these celebrities who support him, and his foundation, I looked it up just out of curiosity, and it was very intermingled with the Gates Foundation, and it had
how peculiar.
Yeah, very, very curious.
Very curious.
Because it was all about what Dr. Rima was talking about, Big Agra, and I looked up the Agra organizations that he's involved in that are supposedly helping people fund seed production in Africa, and of course it leads back to Monsanto. They're all interconnected. So these people, it just comes from every angle. I mean, it doesn't matter, and we have an election coming up. It doesn't Republican doesn't matter. It's all the same. It's all these people. It's just as Dr. Rima put it. It's the definition of a fascist regime is when the government is then working in conjunction with corporate interests. And that's what's happening. There is no separation. So, the end of that. Because they're all working with Monsanto. They're all working with these, and there is a eugenics interest. Now, I'm curious always when I think about this, because I wonder how we're still kind of hanging in there when they're just trying to do all this stuff. And why don't they just blow us up? Like, why don't they?
Because they still need us to work for them. They're not finished, right? And I'm always saying, like, how come we're not dead yet?
Yeah.
All the stuff that they're, spraying on us and, like, putting our food in and our water supply, and, it's very, it gives me hope, actually, and then people are starting to wake up. I think people are starting to put two and two together. I mean, I don't know how many people are awake. I don't have an estimate, but at least I would say I think now there are at least as many people awake as there are people that are like perpetrating crimes against humanity.
Oh,
right?
I think we outnumber them.
You think we outnumber them now?
Yeah, because definitely. Because look at what Zbigniew Zabinski said. You know, he felt that more people were politically awake than ever before, and I really like Dr. Rima. She's pretty cool. She's just like really
she is badass. She's badass. I'm just like,
yeah, she's so smart, and she's kind of like what you want from someone that you're interviewing, because you ask her a question, she answers it like so clearly and concisely.
Yeah.
Really gives you details and more that you ask for.
And she's a good storyteller. I've seen her lectures on YouTube.
Yeah.
It's very or in Google. I've seen them online, but yeah, she's very just a really good storyteller. She tells the truth, but when she talks, she's very good at organizing her ideas. She like gives you mnemonics for you to easily memorize things. She knows a lot of information, but she breaks it down in lay terms for people to understand clearly, you know. And she's fun. She has a sense of humor, and she's, you know, great energy. She's a great woman.
And she always, even though she talks about these very serious issues, she's always very positive, and she's very powerful. She says, we have more power than they do, and their dirty little secret is that they are very weak. And I've always kind of suspected that.
Yeah, like the Wizard of Oz, right? Like
right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Ooh,
yeah.
like the men behind the
Matrix. You know, I mean, when we were talking about, you're saying, well, they need us to work for them. It's like they use the metaphor of it's a battery. Like we're actually the batteries that give them energy. Without us, they don't exist. So they actually need us. But they use like a literal battery. The human being would be they were sort of plugged into these cores, and then they were sort of leeching our energy.
Just like vampires, kind of like vampires.
So, so these reptilian vampires that all run the world.
That's what I think. I think, you know, when I'm having a bad day, I'm like, you know, it could be worse. The world could be run by reptilian vampires.
Right.
You know.
Oh,
wait.
Oh, snap. It actually is run by
reptilians. Oh, snap. Oh, yeah, you know. But, I mean, I know.
Could be run by lunatics that, you know, do mock sacrifices of babies and worship owls. Oh, wait. They do.
Oh, snap, you know, like.
Oh, snap. They do those things.
You know, it's kind of funny. I would joke about stuff like this before I started researching it.
Yeah.
Like, laughing. It's not really funny. It kind of is funny. It's funny that, like, how I thought it was funny before, and how I thought it was ridiculous, and I would hear people talk about stuff, and now I'm, like, on the other side of the fence, and I'm like, oh, wow, that really is possible, you know.
Right. Well, they're just so, they don't act like human beings, that's for sure, so I don't know what they are, but they certainly don't act like human beings.
Well, this is the thing. It doesn't matter. You know, I mean, I joke about it a lot, but I'm open to the possibility that they're not human, because if you think about there being other intelligent life out there, why would they come down and, like saucers and just shoot everybody up with death rays? Wouldn't it actually be more practical, especially if they're outnumbered? Wouldn't it be more practical to take your time and get people, condition people, and get them, you know, kill them slowly and covertly instead of like being in their face? But at the same time, you know, maybe they are human, but they've just lost their humanity down the line. So when I say things about aliens and stuff, I don't say it with conviction, because I've never really seen an alien as far as I know. But you know, it's possible. But the thing is, whether they're human or inhuman, they've lost their humanity along the line somewhere. The fact that this has happened, they're doing it to us, and you know,
it doesn't really matter. Yeah, I always say that too. What difference does it make? You know, people try and use that.
Harp on that though, you know, and just,
they harp on that.
Like, well, it doesn't really matter what they are or who they are. I mean, who they are, what they are, but you know, what matters is we just need to stop them from doing what they're doing, no matter what they are. You know.
Yeah, and it certainly works as a metaphor. I mean, if it's not true. If they aren't actually blood-sucking reptilians, they certainly act like blood-sucking reptilians, and so it certainly seems to be a good and accurate depiction, at least metaphorically.
Yeah, definitely.
So I don't know. it just becomes more and more plausible every day. But the way that these people behave and their mannerisms. But we have hope, and I like that about Dr. Rima. She said we have more power than they do, and that's the dirty little secret. Not that they don't want us to know, and they will actually back down because they're fearful little. They squeak behind and back into their terrariums with their heat lamp, on their hot rocks in their desert living, their reptilian lizard ways. So send them back to the desert. Get them out of here. Or whatever.
My disclaimer, I'm like, if there are good reptilians.
Yeah,
okay, it's cool, that's cool. We like you, but we're just talking about the evil ones. I'm always worried of, we talk about this. What if there really are aliens? And
I know. We sound like.
What if they're like, I'm offended, that you would say such a thing,
Oh, well then just let us know. Come on, we're not going to hurt. We're not mad about that. Yeah, we're not going to.
I like real lizards. They're kind of snakes and stuff. That reptiles don't really bother me. So. No. I'm not too worried about it. If you want to deal with us, you want to integrate, you're cool. I'm all for intergalactic.
Intergalactic, yeah.
What do you call it? Intergalactic integration? I don't know.
Yeah, we're all about that. We're all about
like Star Trek. If we're gonna live in harmony, that's cool. But and same thing. I wouldn't we digress.
We're going off on this reptilian thing. We do that sometimes.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, and if there were humans that invaded a planet doing it to reptilians, I wouldn't go for that either.
Right. No. Yeah, that's right.
Just not either way. So.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. The whole point is that it doesn't really matter. We joke about it because it's funny, and they don't want to really, because Donald Rumsfeld won't admit that he's a lizard. No, it's just funny. It's just funny, that he wouldn't just say no. But the point is, it doesn't really matter because we're still dealing with the same evil, no matter what it is, where it's coming from, and that's pretty much it. So I think we're going to end the show on that note that we are more powerful than they are. That's the dirty little secret.
Yes.
So there you have it. Now, once again, we are Truth or Talk. You can go to our website, truthertease.com, or store at shop.truthertease.com. Until next time, with peace, truth, and love.
Peace, truth, and love, you guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.
According to a report in WorldNet Daily, some of the richest men and women in the world met secretly in New York recently. When the world's wealthiest individuals hold secret meetings, it's time to pay attention. In 1910, the 6 wealthiest men in the world met at Jekyll Island, Georgia. That meeting resulted in the creation, 3 years later, of the largest criminal enterprise ever devised, the Federal Reserve, so-called. Judging from the list of participants, the recent meeting in New York may result in something even more monumental. The London Times identified them as Bill Gates, David Rockefeller, Ted Turner, Oprah Winfrey, Warren Buffett, George Soros, and New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg. Based on the Forbes magazine list of billionaires, the room had a net worth of about $120 billion. With all the bailout figures we've heard recently, that doesn't sound like that much. Believe me, it is. $120 billion is about equal to the annual budget for all of New York State, from New York City to Buffalo and everything in between. The meeting, which took place in early May, was at the home of Sir Paul Nurse, a British Nobel Prize-winning biochemist and president of Rockefeller University. Microsoft's founder, Bill Gates, called the meeting. The London Times reported the informal afternoon session was so discreet that some of the billionaires' aides were told they were at security briefings. Discreet is the British way of saying secret. I do not believe that it is coincidental that this meeting came only a couple of weeks after another super-secret and more powerful group met in the secrecy in Greece, the Bilderberg Group. They have advocated a one-world government for at least a century. They also see themselves as the elite saviors of mankind. According to the Times, the billionaires were each given 15 minutes to present their favorite cause. Over dinner, they discussed how they might settle on an umbrella cause that could harness their interests. Taking their cue from Gates, the report said they agreed that population control was the #1 issue. Experts say the global population will top 7 billion in 2012. According to reports at the meeting, Bill Gates outlined a plan to cap the global population at 8.3 billion. It all sounds so civilized, doesn't it? Here's the less politically correct but more accurate version. A group of unelected liberals with more money than many governments have just decided how many people will be permitted to live. This group of self-appointed governors will now have to draw up criteria to be used to decide who will not be permitted to live and how they will die. It can and will be dressed up in polite and civil terms, but in the end, it means certain people will have to die. The meeting was billed as a meeting of philanthropists wanting to do good. But one can put lipstick and pearls on a pig, and it'll still be a pig. In the final analysis, there's only one way to cap a population, by deciding who's permitted to live and who, for the good of all, must die.